Hi everybody, I'm back. All right, and I'm going to do an Enneagram video. I'll probably be doing several of these. It's something I've studied off and on for 20 years. For those of you who don't know what it is, Google it or YouTube it for the basics. I'm not going to bother um, rehashing the basics of it because there's already plenty of them out there for free. Um, And well, frankly, they're all kind of the same too, which is the problem. Not that there should be too much argument over what it is, it's pretty standard, but it has gotten to a very kind of stagnant point. And like a lot of new agey kind of stuff, it's become very insular. And as the saying goes, if something is not available to the poor, it's neither radical nor revolutionary. Any tool, which is what the Enneagram is, it's a psychological tool. Could be used that way, but it just isn't getting used that way. Um, and the fault is really not with the Enneagram itself, obviously, because can't blame a tool. But the fault is with Enneagram authors and groups of Enneagram enthusiasts who are frankly elitist and racist. Um, gee, Matt, how are they? Elitist and racist? What are you talking about? Well, I'll explain. Okay, so one of the first things that needs to be known is Enneagram is still, although it's kind of known in pockets around the world, it's not a household name by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but you'll see all kinds of claims about what types are more common than others. Um, Types meaning, of course, the various personality types of the Enneagram, of which there are 9, hence the name Enneagram. But, most often you will hear a lot of Enneagram authors and enthusiasts say that the most common type is type 6. And actually, claims to any type being more common than others are frankly bullshit because there hasn't been enough survey of people's Enneagram types to draw any kind of conclusion about that. All you could say is that among Enneagram enthusiasts, these types are more common. A lot of Enneagram enthusiasts even admit that there aren't many 6s in the group. So their claim that 50% of the population is type 6, as some of them like to say, is rooted not in any good data whatsoever, but in out and out projection, and elitist projection at that. Uh, and here's why. Type 6 is concerned with security. Okay. Um, and authority figures and that sort of thing. Their relationship there, always being safe, always on the lookout for danger, that sort of thing. But what the Enneagram is supposed to be is that the various 9 types represent strategies that are both curses and blessings. And the reason why they're all somewhat curses is because these are strategies that we learned in childhood that no longer work as well as we think they do. Now, here's the thing. In, say, the US, for example, where I don't live anymore, but we'll take the US since it's kind of the hub where where a lot of Enneagram groups popped up, although they're kind of everywhere. In the US, 1/3 of the population lives paycheck to paycheck. Okay, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, being concerned about safety and security, especially in the financial department, is not a concern left over from your childhood because of childhood trauma. It's very real and it's now. Okay, so trying to, now if someone's got a big savings account and a good steady income, and they're still showing the over concern for safety and security that we consider to be six-ish, then okay, then maybe you can call that person type 6. But to look at a swath of the population and saying they're type 6 because they're concerned about their finances, they're concerned that, getting sick is gonna, or losing their job if they say the wrong thing to the boss, that's not shit left over from childhood. That's very real shit. And what that shows me is that all these Enneagram enthusiasts who are spewing this shit are frankly just out of touch with reality. Okay, it means, oh, great, you got a cushy life. Yeah, you could label yourself a 6 if you showed that, sure. But it's not what you need here to be understanding what's going on, at least on the psychological level, is not the Enneagram. What you need is Abraham Maslow's pyramid of the hierarchy of needs. If you don't know what that is, Google it. But if you're an Enneagram enthusiast and your knowledge of psychology is so low you don't know about Maslow's pyramid, yeah. Big question mark there. Go learn some other shit besides Enneagram. So that, yeah. That's, and I've definitely saw a video of one Enneagram coach, I guess you could say, who actually did seem to have a surprisingly racially diverse mix of an audience. But he talked about, well, some people just want the gated community life, but others want to go beyond that and think there's more. Well, if you're projecting type 6 onto people who never got the gated community life in the first place, or maybe never cared about it, and you're projecting type 6 onto that shit? No. Now, it's maybe a 6-ish thing, or maybe it's not really an Enneagram type thing, but there's certainly the phenomenon of scapegoating. Well, there's some type 6-ish in that. There's, any type could scapegoat in their own weird sort of way just by blaming other people for their shit. It would just take on a different flavor. So, yeah, that's just some real elitist bullshit when Enneagram enthusiasts start saying that. It's classist. Like I said, go read Abraham Maslow. If you want to actually understand the macroeconomics, hey, go read Karl Marx. All right? But yeah, if you want to apply the Enneagram, increase your body of knowledge outside of it. Well, I really want to get to the where Enneagram groups sometimes get very, very racist. Really, I have to say that started with Don Rizzo. Now he's gone; he can't defend himself. Maybe he grew beyond it at some point. But Rizzo definitely came from money. I mean, he was a Jesuit. He was not super rich. I've seen online podcasts of his co-author, Russ Hudson, talking about how when they met, Don didn't have an office, and they just got together and met at a museum where they could chat. So, okay, he was not filthy rich, but he, the fact that he was, but Russ Hudson also says that he spent years developing it, much to the chagrin of others who thought he was wasting his time. And while I'd certainly agree with pursuing, giving some kudos to pursuing your vision, the fact that he was perhaps able to do that, even if he didn't afford an office but had enough of a security blanket, yeah, he definitely wasn't one of those 1/3 of the population living paycheck to paycheck. Also, and I've done another video on this itself, his titling of type 4 as the subtypes of 4, the two wings, being the aristocrat and the bohemian. What, a 4-wing 3 are inevitably born rich? There aren't poor people who have that same sort of trauma of feeling like they don't fit in and feeling unloved? Yeah, he was projecting way too much of his own shit there. Going the 4-wing 5, that's my type. The bohemian, yeah, that's a group of white people. Yeah, a lot of people who are 4-wing 5s who aren't white. Okay, if you're gonna talk about the Enneagram as universal, then naming a type after a group of white people is not a good idea. Dig? Okay. But where Riza really shows his racism, and I think it's not overt KKK type shit. It's much more, the white liberal shit. Is when he starts typing certain black people and using them as examples. Now, if those of you who've read personality types by Riza knows he gives examples, famous examples of each type, and that in of itself is fine. And he puts this little footnote in every chapter that's, this disclaimer saying that, now, I'm not, that he isn't saying when he gives the list that a person is necessarily unhealthy or unhealthy if they're on version of the type if they're on that list. However, if you read the list, it's very obvious that he, in his mind, on most of those lists, is starting with those he considers to be healthy and is working his way down to unhealthy. Now, I can certainly disagree with a few of his picks on the health level. But for the most part, I think most of us would agree that, in general, that is the tendency on his list. That is, he's giving the list, the people he first names are ones we would consider to be healthy, and working his way on down to outright psychotic, unhealthy examples of each type. And where his racism is most blatant is in his list of type 6. Of course, down at the bottom, he puts Hitler. And I probably agree that Hitler's type 6. But what's sad is only a few places before Hitler at the bottom of the list, he puts Malcolm X. And that's just some racist bullshit right there, because Malcolm X is one of the greatest minds and healthiest people of the 20th century. And for Rizzo to put him that close to Hitler, fuck you, Don Rizzo. Fuck you. Yeah, that's some racist bullshit I hope you're atoning for. Because it shows that he didn't. He's got a very whitey perception of who Malcolm X was. Now, at the very top of his type 8 list, he puts Martin Luther King, and I definitely think King deserves to be recognized as a very healthy person. I'll get into how he typed Martin Luther King that may bespeak a little subtle racism, but I'm going to stick a little more with Malcolm for right now, especially since Malcolm really often doesn't get his due in a lot of circles. Um, so for him to put Malcolm X not too far away from Hitler, again, Rizzo, fuck you for that. Fuck you, you racist piece of shit for that. But even calling Malcolm X a type 6, I won't call myself an expert on Malcolm X, but I clearly know a shitload more about him than Don Rizzo did. And no, I don't buy it. And the reasons why I think Rizzo typed him that way also shows Don Rizzo's racism. Okay, the type 6 is security oriented. They're fear based, always seeing everything as a potential danger. Now, again, if you're a black man in America, that's not leftover childhood trauma, that's very real shit. Just like financial security is for 1/3 of the population who's paycheck to paycheck. For black people, just simply looking over your shoulder around Whitey is very real and necessary shit. Okay. Because of a very real and ongoing, systematically racist system they're stuck in. Okay, so we're not talking childhood trauma here. Also, if you actually listen to Malcolm X's speeches, he's always talking about freedom as the goal. Freedom and self-determination. That's not type 6. 6 is very security conscious. Freedom's almost at the other end of that. That's type 7. If you listen to Malcolm X's Ballad of the Bullet speech, it's all about how the white system bamboozles black people and distracts them. And he's given them what's really going on underneath it. That is not 6 integrating to 9, that's 7 integrating to 5. But where I'm specifically going to, and I'm not necessarily saying Malcolm is a type 7, although I'm kind of leaning towards it. It's definitely other characteristics in his aggressiveness that would lean towards type 8. So I'm thinking 7 with an 8 wing, could be 8 with a 7 wing. But I'm really leaning towards type 7. But see, because 6s have they're security conscious. They have kind of a love-hate relationship with authority figures, always wanting to know where the authority figure, what they're thinking. But also there's kind of a need to rebel because it's just too clustering kind of thing. And maybe there's a little bit of that dynamic that played out between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, but you never get the feeling from that. A lot of people referred to him as Elijah Muhammad as a mentor to him. That's true enough. But also as a father figure, and you could even make somewhat of that. You could definitely make that claim. Who then later had had a falling out. That doesn't make anyone a type 6. And certainly it wasn't like he was just trying to test the boundaries with Elijah Muhammad. He had a genuine disagreement with the guy. So I don't think that dynamic is true, but Malcolm was always encouraging black people to be proud of themselves, to have their own freedom, and to not be a sucker for all the white man's bullshit. Again, that's very much that's 7 going to 5, not 6 going to 9. And also, though, because 6 is so focused on authority figures, see, the type 6, whether they're in what they call the phobic or counterphobic stage, or they're either complying or rebelling to the authority figure, they always see that authority figure as a legitimate authority figure. And I don't think Malcolm X ever saw the U.S. government or its white supremacist power structure as a legitimate moral authority. He saw it as, an institution that had power. But did he see them as legitimate? No, I don't think so. But Don Rizzo did, so he couldn't help but interpret Malcolm X's rebellion against white power as a 6-ish dynamic, when it just plain wasn't. It was a 7-ish dynamic. He himself said, I'm about freedom. Said some people say we need to do it through integration. I say we need to do it through separation. It was about freedom. That's not 6-ish. It's Rizzo's racism that legitimized white power, whereby he sees Malcolm X as rebelling against authority, but Malcolm X never recognized its moral legitimacy. And he shouldn't have, because it is not morally legitimate. But Rizzo thinks it is. And even when Malcolm wanted to go above the U.S. government and go to the UN, that didn't seem like he was going to the real authority figure. It's just he was going to another level of power strategically. I don't think he necessarily gave them any more moral legitimacy. It was just, he realized the U.S. was trying to put up a face, and maybe if he went to the UN exposing them, they might have to make some changes out of shame. But he was never recognizing their moral legitimacy. So, yeah, but Rizzo totally fucked up there. And we're also fucked up. And now the person who he leads his type 3 list, who he's calling a healthy figure, is Michael Jordan. Now, I've worked with my share of Black Power activists in my time, and I can tell you right now that there are all kinds of black men out there in these Black Power movements who hate the guy. They hate him, and for good reason. Because at one point when they were a little boy, Michael was their hero. And they'd find out that there was some local event he was going to be at, and they'd go trying to get an autograph. And Michael told them no. And then 2 minutes later, gave his autograph to some little white boy. And now the guy invests in private prisons, who target more than anyone else black men. And Rizzo's saying, Rizzo's putting this guy at the top of his 3 list. Fuck that shit. Also calling, he puts Martin Luther King at the top of his type 8 list. I agree. Martin Luther King definitely needs to be at the top or near the top of a list if we're if it's a list of healthy and unhealthy people with the healthier ones at the top. Yeah, Martin Luther King definitely needs to be at or near the top. I don't disagree there. But I definitely question whether or not he was actually an 8. I could see that. I could also see him being a 1. Um, definitely holds. You can definitely see a lot of both types in there, even if there's definitely some kind of almost complementary parts to 8 and 1. But because 8 is thought as the most aggressive, most challenging type, the fact that Rizzo put a black man who, for most of his life, preached nonviolence. I don't think Rizzo knew that he was having doubts about the nonviolent philosophy toward the end of his life, but without going into that, because there is such a false stereotype and a white supremacist agenda that promotes the hypersexualization of black men, there's definitely some. It's like Rizzo is his version of King is the white establishment's version of King. I don't think he ever read Letter from the Birmingham Jail or Beyond Vietnam or heard his Get Our Check speech. When he's putting a black man preaching nonviolence in the type 8 category, it's almost like he's playing on the assumption of the black man being hypersexual. Reza just did not do his homework when it came to researching the black people he used on his list. He just didn't. He used very much the mainstream white supremacist narrative about them. That was a goof. It was fucked up. And until we really start, applying some critical race theory to Enneagram discussion, it's going to remain this predominantly white and bougie tool. Lastly, another big contributor to you just had what was when I was watching his stuff was just like shit. Racist moment was Richard Rohr. Now, if you're certain, it's from his Discernment of Spirits talk, which was, I think someone else just videotaped it kind of guerrilla style. It's talk he gives in some classroom setting. I'm not sure where. And for the most part, it's pretty good talk, and he seems like the kind of guy I could have a pretty good conversation with. But there's one point where I was like, because he, in giving examples of each type, he also likes to list countries that kind of embody that personality type. And, maybe you could get picky with him. For the most part, I thought his picks were pretty good. At least, even if I really analyzed them, maybe there might be some I disagree with, but it would take a while to be that, to research enough to be that picky. But he seemed to be doing pretty good with type 1 through type 8. And then he gets to type 9. And when someone in the audience asks, well, what's a 9 country? He says, oh, it's the developing world. And he talks about the sin being of the 9s, of course, being sloth, and these countries haven't developed and that sort of shit. Which I'm just going, oh, you racist motherfucker. Um, yeah, I hope he hears this. I know he's getting old. I think he had a heart attack, so I know the poor guy ain't doing well. But he's the one, so he's about correcting stuff. So I'm gonna give him a taste of his own medicine. I think he'll appreciate it. Um, Even if what he said was really fucked up there, because first of all, it presupposes that because a nation is not developed industrially, that they're also not developed culturally. And that's just some racist bullshit for him to say that. I live in Thailand now. I would probably be considered in terms of the Western world, quote unquote, developing. But like I said, I kind of hate that term. Because again, Thailand has a really rich culture. And if you're wondering, no, I wouldn't call them a type 9, I'd call them a type 7. Thailand is the country, is the one Southeast Asian country that successfully resisted colonization. They're not type 9. On that alone, they're not type 9. Okay? But some of I've been to some of the countries nearby. Vietnam, I'd call a 5. I could definitely launch into probably Ho Chi Minh was probably a 5. That's another video, though. I'd call Singapore a definite 6. They're probably considered developed, but by the whitey Western terminology we use today, but I'd definitely call Singapore type 6 country. Why would I be making these? Well, like, okay, Vietnam. Vietnam. The people are very smart and educated on a political level. Your Joe Average is there can talk about world politics really well. And they know how to keep things close to their chest, but they know how to get aggressive when they need to be. Whereas Singapore, very, very safe place, very clean place, but a lot of strict rules and a real glorification of like cybersecurity, military type stuff. You'll even see ads promoting it big time when you're at the subway there. Now, one country I am very near that I've been to a few times that might actually be a type 9, but not in an underdeveloped, slothful sense, but more on the healthy side of type 9, might be Malaysia. Malaysia is the one country in the world that has a king that's elected. Although it's from has to be elected from, like a set of 5 families. I'm not fully sure why. Maybe it was different kingdoms before, so they kind of agreed to come together and quasi-rotate. But you have a lot of religious diversity in Malaysia. Of course, it's majority Malay, majority Muslim, but that's only at about maybe 55-60% of the population. So you have a large Chinese population with a lot of temples, a lot of Chinese temples, just like there are lots of mosques. Also a large Indian population that's mostly Hindu, and lots of gorgeous Hindu temples as well. And they get along pretty well. You'll see groups of women, some wearing hijabs, some not, and they're getting along. So it's definitely more the healthy uh, diversity inclusive aspect. You'd see in the healthy, developed 9, not in the um, passive aggressive, underdeveloped 9. So, yeah, Rohr just really showed his unconscious racism by saying that. It seems like maybe his travel was limited to places he considered developed. Yeah. He fucked up there. But this all creates this, um, all these sorts of things, they create this milieu where, it makes like Enneagram kind of has this like exclusive club kind of thing. Either you know it or you don't. And no, not really. I mean, it's a tool. Use it, play with it. Now, most people, when they're again going back to the idea of typing countries, just about everyone will call the U.S. a type 3 country. Yeah, I'll agree with that. And most will even say it's a dysfunctional 3 country. Well, oftentimes they say it's becoming or has become a dysfunctional type 3. I'd say it was always a pretty dysfunctional country, although probably in its inception it was more of a dysfunctional type 1 country, if we're going back to like when it was still, a colony, Puritans. Yeah, that's dysfunctional type 1. But yeah, I would definitely say it's a highly unhealthy type 3 culture. Putting, the whole advertisements, sound bites, everything about an image, they're making a complete mockery out of the term democracy, which it isn't. But when it's just so nakedly capitalistic, that all but the stupidest can't see. All but the stupidest can see, I should say. The few who make money off being like Enneagram coaches and stuff never seem to be challenging U.S. culture. They try to be, despite the fact that they'll call it a dysfunctional type 3 country and culture, they don't seem to be challenging it any. They seem to be trying to find a way to sell their Enneagram work to corporations to make them all that better at making money at the expense of whoever else, but never challenging the system when they're just trying to fit in with it, rather than really challenge it or ask the question, how can we use Enneagram to attack the foundation, the evil foundations of capitalism and white supremacy? How to be anti-colonial with the Enneagram. They don't ask that question because ultimately they're enwrapped in fitting into rich whiteyville. And it's not going anywhere beyond that, but that's where it needs to go. It's time that, I didn't list the basic the basic types. Like I said, you can look them up online. You can find other YouTubers, and you can watch that stuff for free. So that's at least a little bit of free access to the Enneagram. But they're not there. It needs to be like James Hillman said, the psychotherapy room needs to be the cell of revolution. Enneagram needs to be a tool of revolution. or else it's just more of the same dysfunctional type 3 bullshit that the US currently is. People just rehashing the Enneagram with new bells and whistles, trying to sell it a little differently. It needs to be challenged, and other works need to be integrated with it. And it might even not even be Enneagram anymore, because maybe as it really spreads to other cultures, we'll find that the nine the nine sins, we can add a few more that we never even thought of. So yeah, that's where it needs to go. All right, that's a wrap.